Hi there, and welcome back to my random level 1 run of Elden Ring, and today we're starting out in Roundtable because I defeated the second demigod Renala last time, so now I go to talk to Anya so I can have my talisman pouch for my third talisman slot. So now my plan is to go ahead and pick up the Serpent Hunter from Rykard's boss room, so first I have to kill the Galtian noble that's on the way, so I put the Ice Spear Ash of War on the Knight Rider Glaive because I wanted to use it to poise break him, but turns out it's not the right Ash of War for the job. I know that Ice Spear actually has 2 hitboxes, including one on the startup animation, and maybe if I use that to my advantage I could stance break the noble pretty easily, but my point was that I wanted to stance break him from a safe distance, so that was kind of not what I wanted, and the projectile part of Ice Spear wasn't good enough, and before long I got my ass kicked. So now I switched to the Spectral Lance Ash of War, which is what I actually wanted. Anyway, it turns out this wasn't really as good an idea as I thought it was going to be, because first off, Spectral Lance is pretty darn slow, which is not exactly ideal against a boss that moves and attacks as fast as this guy does, and secondly, I actually needed 3 Spectral Lance in order to stance break him, which isn't what I expected. I thought I would only need 2, so not exactly the most efficient thing in the world, but it is better than fighting him up close, I guess. Another problem I had was that the stance breaks didn't feel very consistent even after figuring all of that out, because sometimes I would throw 3 of them in his face and he wouldn't even get stance broken, and I have a couple of ideas as to why this might happen, and I figure maybe it's because of headshots, or maybe there's a fall-off hitbox when the spear travels far enough, and those things might do more or less stance damage, so it might make things a bit more inconsistent than I was hoping for. But after a couple of tries, I did eventually get an attempt where I took it slow and patiently enough to actually succeed. Well, that was kind of a scuffed strategy, but I guess it worked, so that's all that matters. And afterwards I can go ahead and start exploring the rest of Volcano Manor, and it didn't take too long before I made my way over to Rykard, even if I almost died a couple of times on the way, but once I reached the teleporter I was home free, and that was all that mattered. Well, now that I've made it to Rykard, I can pick up the Serpent Hunter, which is really the only reason I came here, but, well, since I made it all the way here, I may as well go ahead and fight Rykard for the hell of it. Well, I wanted to put a funny song over this failure montage that I had while fighting against Rykard, but, well, I couldn't find a way to download anything because I'm stupid, for one, and secondly, I was also kinda scared that I'd get copyright striked or something, so I'm just going to let it play out instead. Well, anyway, after 13 deaths, I finally managed to go ahead and kill the first phase, so that's cool, but it's still not over, so I go ahead and buff myself for the second one. Well, the good news is that phase 2 is actually a lot easier, for me at least. His attacks were far easier to dodge, and there was also way more opportunities to go ahead and attack him by dodging over his giant sword, and proper use of the Ash of War could also help do a lot of damage, and because this phase felt a lot slower, I also had a lot more opportunities to use it. It also felt a lot easier to get staggers with the Ash of War, which was also really nice, but eventually Rykard started getting ready to do his giant AoE attack, and, well, that's when I died, because during this attack he occasionally summons fire pillars from all over the place, and if you get a little unlucky, they'll spawn right under you, and then there's nothing you can do if you're in the middle of an attack, so after dying to that twice, I decided to say screw it, and now I'm going to go to Altus in order to pick up a couple of things, and since I already have both halves of the medallion, I might as well go ahead and use the Lift of Dectus, because Ruin-strewn Precipice time. And of course I'm only coming through here in order to pick up all the smithing stones that are lying about. Eventually I managed to reach the outdoor part of the precipice, and from that point on it was just a simple stroll filled with miners, bats, and octopuses. Well, anyway, before long I managed to reach the top and start fighting Magma Worm Makar, and, well, usually I have some trouble with these guys because of their weird-ass charge attack, but this one was actually really easy, and I just managed to kill him on my first try without even getting hit, and afterwards it was finally time to head into Altus. So what am I even coming to the Altus Plateau for in the first place? Well, actually, I wanted to pick up both the Ritual Sword and Ritual Shield Talisman, since, judging by my Dark Souls 3 level 1 run, I figured they could probably be useful. And since my goal is also to defeat all of the Remembrance bosses, that means I need to progress Fia's quest in order to go ahead and beat Fortisax later on, so after getting D killed, I was back to the Altus Plateau in order to start by going to some ruins and picking up a random Ash of War that I'll never use. The fight against the Demi-Human Queen was about as interesting and eventful as you would expect, and by that I mean all I did is use 4 charge attacks and a single crit in order to kill her, and this let me claim my Ritual Sword Talisman as my reward. After that I took a quick trip to the Golden Lineage Evergaol so I could fight Godfroy, because, well, I guess I wanted to pick up Godfrey's icon, since maybe I'll use it eventually, and after an embarrassing fail where I just straight up threw myself into one of his attacks and got one-shotted, I managed to come back and give him what for. With him done, I went ahead and picked up some more upgrade materials for my flask, including some Golden Seed and Sacred Tears, and I also bodied a poor Sanguine Noble on the way, and I watched this beetle get smacked to death by a couple of worm faces, and I also met the local wildlife. They were not nice. So now I started heading on over to Lanedale, because that's where the Ritual Shield Talisman is, and I picked up some more Golden Seed, and I also picked up a seal that I'll never be able to use because I will never have the stats for it. And I also went into the Seal Tunnel to pick up the Smithing Stone Bell Bearing so I could buy some more Smithing Stones at Round Table in case I need them. And I decided I was also going to finish the rest of the dungeons to pick up more free Smithing Stones, and this proved to be harder than expected for someone of my mental capacity. Well, anyway, after a couple of incredibly, pathetically embarrassing fails, I was back in business once again, and I managed to go through the rest of the dungeon without too much trouble, at least. And I eventually managed to reach the boss, who was an absolute pushover, because, well, I could basically just R1 spam him to death, and once I was done with that, I started heading on over to Lanedale once more. On the way, I bought some rune arcs from a random traveling merchant, and I also picked up some crystal tears in the midst of a random low-resolution segment that I don't know how it happened, and I also reunited with Bogard, and I bought some crabs, because why not? And now it was time to head on over and finally go ahead and fight the Draconic Tree Sentinel. So during my first attempt, I was foolishly thinking this would actually be fairly easy, but I was quickly proven wrong when I found out that once my bubble shield breaks, I'm getting one-shotted, because of course I am. But after respawning, I managed to find out a way to sneak past him in order to get a free cheap shots on his backside before the fight really starts. As long as you're willing to hide behind this tree for a little bit, you'll be completely fine, because you'll eventually lose interest and simply turn around again. And from that point on, you can just kind of head behind him and start the fight however the hell you want, but of course I begin by buffing. After the buffs, I use a fully charged Great Serpent Hunt in order to immediately stance break him, and normally I'd use a charge attack, but I totally screwed it up over here, so I just did a regular R1 and I kept going, but despite all of that, as you could have probably guessed, it wasn't good enough to actually carry me throughout this fight, because, well, I'm bad. Well, anyway, as you might have also guessed, because I'm dumb and I don't know when to give up, I just kept on banging my head against the wall in the hope that it would eventually break, but turns out it was more resilient than I thought it was going to be when I started this whole thing, and I died more than a handful of times, because of course I did. Well, regardless of all of that, I decided to keep on trying and attempt to beat this boss for frankly way too long, longer than I care to admit, but it eventually became clear to me that I was getting nowhere really quickly, and so after yet even more deaths, I finally decided to call it quits for the day. Well, upon coming back to the game the next day, I find out that I'm actually still right here next to this boss, so I figure I might as well go ahead and give it one attempt. I'm not gonna win or anything, but maybe it'll help. Wait, what? Yeah, so I guess that a bit of patience as well as a lot of positioning and maneuvering in order to bait easier to dodge attacks from the boss was actually all I needed in order to beat him, I guess. And once I came back, I managed to beat him exactly on my first try, and I guess the real lesson here is that taking a break is overpowered. Well, with him dead, the only thing left to do is to actually head into Lanedale and go ahead and pick up the item I came here for, so After exploring for a little bit, I eventually got my ass kicked and decided it was probably just a better idea to simply run through everything. Also, Melina abandoned me. After introducing a knight to the wonders of gravity, I picked up the golden seed next to the Colosseum and aggroed the gargoyle, who one-shot me from off-screen because my camera wasn't looking the right way. And then I made my way to the Colosseum, where this gladiator kicked my ass a couple of times, but after killing both of them, I finally picked up the ritual shield talisman. And you might be wondering why I fought them in the first place. I don't know. Well, since I was already kinda close by, I decided I was gonna try my hand at fighting Godfrey, because, well, I definitely wouldn't mind having my last talisman slot, because that could really help me. So I went ahead and fought him, and believe it or not, he kicked my ass. Because of course he did. Well, the good news is that thanks to the ritual shield talisman, I was actually able to avoid getting one-shotted by fake Godfrey, so at the very least I can say that my entire trip over to Lanedale was kind of worth it, and wasn't a total waste of time, even if I did have to get my ass kicked for hours on end by all the bosses on the way. Surprisingly enough, I only died 8 times against Godfrey, but the final attempt was kind of scary, because right as I was about to kill him, I kept missing all of my attacks, so I was really scared that I would die like an idiot, but I did manage to finish him off and get my final talisman, and with that, I'm off to Limgrave in order to do some side quest shenanigans, starting with patches. Well, when it comes to patches, I was only really here for Margit's Shackle, just in case I was going to need it for Morgoth, because I have a feeling he's going to wreck my shit something hardcore. And afterwards I headed over to Gustok so I could buy the buckler, just in case I feel like doing some parry shenanigans. And now it's time to venture on into Caelid and start messing around over there. So my first order of business is to kill the Erdtree Avatar for some Crystal Tears for the Physic Flask, and after beating a bunch of Guardians, I managed to kill the Erdtree Avatar. It was a total cakewalk, as he always is. And afterwards I headed over into some nearby ruins in order to fight these mad pumpkin heads that I had no reason to fight, but well, I was there and I wanted to do it, and I eventually realized that I was really darn close to killing the first one before the other one could interfere, so I died. So for my second attempt I used some Exalted Flesh for a bit more physical damage in the hope that this would be enough to boost my damage on over to the threshold required to actually kill this guy before the other one can interfere, and it turns out it worked beautifully, so now that he's dead I can focus on beating the other one without too much trouble. With this pointless little diversion taken care of, I'm heading off to the Gale Tunnel, because I want the smithing stones that are in there, like with every other tunnel in the game. So now it's time for the Caelid Collectathon to begin, and it begins with a Kindred Pest kicking my ass, and it continues with a Deathrite Bird kicking my ass. So yeah, just in case I haven't said it before, I fucking hate Deathrite Birds, and this one proceeded to kick my ass for, frankly, way too long, because I wanted to get the Death Poker thing, just in case I would never use it, but yeah, this sucked. The arena wasn't helping things, since I was constantly getting stuck on geometry all over the place, but after a couple of attempts, right as I was starting to think I should give up and come back later, I finally managed to kill the goddamn thing. Hey dude, I killed your dog. So now I head over into Celia in order to light the flames and go on to the church to start Millicent's questline, and I start by wasting a lot of time on this beetle thing in order to get the Ash of War, and afterwards I'm off to light the 3 flames. Afterwards I go ahead and start looting Celia for all it has to offer, getting jump scared by a couple of mages, picking up a golden scene, and then dying an embarrassing death at the hand of the Nox duo before making it to the church to pick up the Sacred Tear, and then I fight Commander O'Neill, who was a pushover, and I killed him on my first try, so now it's time to head back to Gowrie so we can fix the needle. Fortunately, time doesn't actually work properly when you quit out of the game, so you can just use it to have the needle get repaired immediately, and now I go ahead and give it to Millicent, who kills herself with it. After coming back to life, she gives me the Prosthesis Wearer heirloom, and she goes ahead to see Gowrie and stuff, but he kind of just denies her. But anyway, as for me, I head over into the Celia Crystal Tunnel, where I get my ass kicked by a Falling Star Beast, among other things. You know the drill by now. I was only here for the smithing stones and the bell bearing that you get by killing the boss, so I could have more smithing stones. And afterwards I take a quick trip to Roundtable in order to upgrade the Serpent Hunter, and now I'm off to Redmane Castle to go ahead and fight Radahn. While I'm here with the Radahn Festival underway, I come across the second greatest enemy in all of Souls games, Locked Doors. you can't open them when the festival is going on, so I had to instead hop into the courtyard with this barrel over here. So anyway, I decided to pick a fight with the lion, and one of them eventually cornered me, and then I died. But after I come back, I go ahead and promptly kill both of them without too much trouble. Pick up some more random loot all over the place and come across more locked doors, and then you can finally start heading over to Radon. Well, it's time for Radon now, and as you can see, it started out incredibly well, and as you could have probably guessed, it continued going just as well. So yeah, obviously I died a couple of times, big surprise there, but it turns out Radon wasn't as bad as I thought, even though I deliberately went out of my way to fight him without the horse or the summons, because, well, I don't like using them. But I did use the trick to cheese and bypass the range phase at the beginning, except this time where I actually messed it up and I had to deal with it regardless. So funnily enough, this attempt where I failed to bypass the range phase was actually the successful one, and obviously this was all planned right from the very beginning, because if I had bypassed the phase and then won, people would have told me it didn't count because I cheesed it or something, so... Well, anyway, now that I didn't cheese it, I can go ahead and fight Radon properly. Well, once he gets to half health, he yeets himself into the sky in order to come down like a meteorite, and I use this opportunity to apply Golden Vow, and once Radon comes back and changes the time of day to night, I go ahead and finish the fight, though I did have one close call here. Fortunately, at least for me, I managed to dodge every hit of his follow-up combo attack in order to survive, and I also managed to use strafes in order to get some opportunities for some greedy charge attacks, which almost ended up costing me my life right here, but everything was okay in the end, and there was a bit of luck here where he managed to just swing his sword right over my head. Not that it would have killed me anyways. And before long I managed to finally kill him. So I now get his Remembrance and his Great Rune, which I probably will not use either of them, and after skipping the follow-up cutscene and talking to Alexander and Blythe, I start to head over to the War-Touched Catacombs, but it kinda takes a while to get there. Well, anyway, I'm really only here for the golden seed that you get by killing the boss right at the end, but before I get there I have to actually unlock the boss and everything, and there was a couple of knights on the way, but they were relatively uneventful because I could just smack them over and over and there was nothing they could do. So after opening the boss arena, it's time to actually go ahead and fight the boss. Fortunately, the boss is just another tree spirit, and these things are total pushovers. Or at least they would be if I didn't suck terribly at the game. That and the fact that I was getting one-shotted by every attack certainly didn't help. So yeah, this ended up taking a few attempts as a result because I kept being stupid and bad and other such things, but eventually after a couple of attempts I finally managed to get it over with. So with another tree spirit dead, that's one more golden seed for me, as well as some random spirit ashes I'll never use, and that's also going to be the end of the video, so I know no one makes it here, but thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, you know, all that stuff, and as for me, I'm gonna go die because I'm sick.